Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Gill. I'm the director of the Dover Public Library. I have 2:30 on the wristwatch, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If you are here to listen and to ask questions to mystery author Amanda Flower, you are in the right place. So I wanted to welcome you and thank you for participating in the Canaltown Book Fest. I wanted to go over a few housekeeping issues. First of all, as in with our other sessions, participants who join are automatically muted and the video will be off. So we ask you to, if you notice that you have changed that setting, please keep yourself muted. That's very important. We will do a Q&A at the end. So if you develop a question throughout Amanda's talk, write that message in the chat box and we will provide those to the author to answer at the end of the program. This program also is being recorded, so you'll be able to find this on the Canaltown Book Fest website page, as well as on our YouTube channel here at the Dover Public Library. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Canaltown Book Fest. You may have participated in our first year, which was 2019. That was right here at the Dover Public Library. We had 35 authors, and we were in person. You guys remember those days? We were actually in person. In 2020, we upped our game and we were going to be downtown Dover. We had permission from the mayor to block off Main Street, which is 3rd Street here in Dover. We had a huge tent lined up. We were going to do a big book fest. Then of course we know what happened. And so 2021, we had to make decisions, and we are I'm so glad we have talented people on our committee that help make this virtual Book Fest a reality. So at that, I would like to mention those people. So Sherry Broncar is a longtime librarian. She currently is at the Guernsey County District Library in Cambridge, Ohio. She is a library veteran. She has incredible tech insight. Is just one of those good idea people. So glad to have her on our planning committee. Dave Jones is the owner of the Bibliophile Bookshop, which is a new bookshop right here in downtown Dover. I encourage you to swing by and check out his shop on 3rd Street. Patricia Miller is a Dover resident and a published author, and so good to have a writer's perspective as we plan events like this. So we are so grateful for Patty and her insight on what authors are looking for in a good literary event, what makes a good literary event from the author's perspective. So we thank Patty for her help with that. And last but not least, Mallory Thompson. She's a librarian here, a professional librarian. She has her MLIS degree, and we are putting that to use by using her ideas, her creativity, her tech skills, and she did a lot of the communication with you all. So we are grateful for Mallory. That wonderful poster you guys saw with the roses and the prints, the letters on the flowers, she designed that herself. So we're grateful for Mallory for her talents. Our sponsors today, we have the Tuscarawas County Literacy Coalition, the Dover Library, of course, the Canal Dover Association, and the Bibliophile Bookshop. So I wanted to run down those supporters who made our event such a success so far in 2021. So here we are, Amanda Flower, and in the moments before we were live with you all, I reminded her that she did come to the Dover Public Library early on in her writing career. This had to be around 2010 or 2011, I think, when she was a newbie, a rookie, and she's come a long way. So we're excited to hear her story. So today we're going to have Amanda Flower. She's going to share a program called The Road to Becoming a Best-Selling Author. A little bit about Amanda. She is a USA Today best-selling and Agatha Award-winning author of over 35 cozy mystery novels. She started her writing career in elementary school when she read a story she wrote to her 6th grade class and had the class in stitches with her description of being stuck on the top of a Ferris wheel. She knew at that moment she found her calling of making people laugh with her words. In addition to being an author, Amanda is a former librarian with 15 years of experience in Northeast Ohio. And I did look up her books, quite an extensive list. Her first one, Made of Murder, in 2010. And most recently, just in 2021 alone, Lemon Drop Dead, 2021, Marriage to Be Mischief, and then Farm to Trouble, also in 2021. So at this point, we're going to turn it over to our featured author, Amanda Flower.
Thank you so much, Jim. And I just want to take a moment to thank the Dover Library and the Book Festival Committee, Mallory, and also the Bibliophile Bookshop and everyone else that's involved for everything you've done. You put this together in some pretty extreme circumstances, so you should be proud that the festival went on, and I'm looking forward to 2022 and seeing what may happen next year, maybe in person again. You know, we're all hoping for that. Like Jim said, I started my writing career when I was in sixth grade. So I know there's probably a lot of aspiring authors here, and you're wondering, you're either aspiring author, or maybe you're published, independently published, and you're wondering, how do I get from where I am now to where I want to be? And that was something as a young writer that I was always contemplating, because there was always something else, somewhere else I wanted to go in my career. But to start off, I I have always been a storyteller. So to go way, way back to preschool, I used to go to school when I was 3 or 4 years old, and something would happen. So say a little boy in my class messed up the finger paint and paint went everywhere. By the time I got home and told my parents about the story of what happened, it became much more elaborate, much bigger, and it had like 3 stages of, craziness. Like kids were running everywhere and people had to jump out of windows, and just very elaborate, very big imagination. So my dad always called me a little storyteller. And then it wasn't until I was in sixth grade that my verbal love of telling stories translated into the actual found that I had a talent to write stories more than even to speak them. So my sixth grade teacher gave us in a school assignment to write about what we did our summer vacation. And I went to a small Christian school, and it felt like to me as an 11-year-old that everyone in my class did something much more exciting than I did. So some of them went to Florida, some of them went to other states to see family. Maybe they even went to Europe. The most exciting thing I did that summer was I went to Jogga Lake. So now I'm dating myself. Jogga Lake, of course, is an amusement park in Aurora, Ohio that is no longer in existence, and it has not been in existence for, gosh, maybe 15 years. I'm not even sure, but it's been closed a long time. And when I was a child, Jogga Lake was kind of like the sad little cousin to Cedar Point. Of course, Cedar Point is still with us and doing very well. And so I went there with my brother and my best friend, True, and we went on the Ferris wheel, still True. But when we got on the Ferris wheel burst into flames and my brother fell out of the Ferris wheel. Not true. Because of course something like that would have hit the Cleveland news if a child is plummeting out of a burning Ferris wheel. Now, in my story, he was rescued. So it wasn't until later as an adult that I put the murder or death element more in my stories as a mystery writer. So that's kind of how I got started. And I think a lot of writers think because of my age or my perceived age that I must have got like the special sprinkle, fairy sprinkles, or, just got really lucky and was published, when I was like 15. Not true at all. So it took a very long time to sell my first novel. So, like Jim said, my first book came out in 2010. I started writing that book in 2001. So it was a 9-year progression. I started writing the novel when I was a college junior. And what really spurred me on to writing it, I knew I wanted to be a writer then. I knew that I wanted to be a librarian as well, because I knew from my father, a very practical electrical engineer, that I was going to have another career to support myself moving forward. until I was at the point where I could support myself with my writing. So librarians seemed like the perfect fit. I'm around books all the day. I'm around people who love books. I get to learn how to research, which is so valuable as a writer. And I get to see how author programs work. Like it was, how could it be more perfect? So when I was in college, I was applying to near the end of college to go to library school. And I started writing this novel because I was in, I think it was my second semester of my junior year. I was in a creative writing class, and my professor in my creative writing class hated my writing. So I've always been what you call a popular fiction author, which means I write genre fiction, specifically in my case, mystery. And my teacher was very much a literary fiction author. She had had a story published in the Atlantic Monthly. She was hoping, to be at the same echelon as, Faulkner, Fitzgerald, Hemingway, all those guys. And that has never been my goal as an author. My goal goes back to sixth grade when my class laughed at my story and thought I was funny. Like my goal is to bring people joy, escapism, just to make people happy. So she didn't like my writing at all. And I don't know. I just was like very like, I'm going to show you. So I think if you're an aspiring writer, there has to be a little bit of you inside you that you're like, there's a lot of naysayers or people that think, why are you writing on a Saturday? You work, 5 days a week. Why are you spending all day Saturday writing when you can be having fun? Well, the reason is this is your purpose. This is why you're here. So if you really, really want to get published, if this is your true passion and love, you have to make the time for it. So she didn't like it. So I started writing a mystery novel. And there's a myriad of reasons why it went from 2001 to 2010 before publication. And a lot of those have to do with I was finishing college, I went to graduate school, and right after graduate school, I moved out to Amish country to be a librarian. So that's where I got my first library job, which I'll talk about that in a little bit because, you guys are kind of right at the entrance in Dover to Amish country, the biggest Amish country maybe in the country. I know Lancaster County likes to, claim that, but there are more Amish in Holmes County, from statistically. So I started writing it and had all these personal things happen. And I did get a literary agent when I was very young. So I was 24. And I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know any other writers. I didn't know how publishing worked. So I trusted this person that I thought was going to sell my book to some big shot publisher in New York City. And I didn't know how to check up that things were going okay, or how communication was supposed to work between a literary agent and author. Long story short, I ended up letting her go, and I had this book, Made of Murder, that I still really, really believed in. I thought it should be published. I thought it was funny. So for those of you who have not read my first book, it's about a college librarian in a small town that becomes an amateur sleuth. So at that, I wrote it before I was a librarian, but I did end up being a college librarian in a small town when I was out in Amish country in Knox County specifically. So I had the book, and then I decided that every literary agent in the world would not pick it up because it had already done what I'd like to call this rejection tour of New York City. Like everyone had seen it and everyone had said no. because the other agent had sent it out, maybe not as aggressively as she should have, but it had made the rounds. So I sent it to this publisher, Gale Cengage. So Gale Cengage, for those in libraries know, it's basically known for doing like databases, directories, that sort of thing, way back when encyclopedias as well. But at the time, they had this really kind of quirky mystery line, and they still have a kind of quirky Western line to this day, that they accepted unsolicited manuscripts. And unsolicited manuscripts are manuscripts without a literary agent. Now, today, if you're an aspiring mystery author, I cannot think of a single publisher that will accept an unsolicited manuscript. Things have changed quite a bit in publishing. So this was 2007, I sent it to them. So that was a while ago. And when they received it, probably within an hour, I got a rejection email back, like, thank you, but no thank you. So I was like, all right, fine, I can handle it. By this time I've been rejected probably 40 times. So you're just like, oh, okay, whatever. And so I started writing a children's book. I wrote a children's middle grade mystery. So I was like, well, maybe if I cannot make it as an adult author, like maybe I can write it children's books, because I loved Nancy Drew. I loved the Babysitter's Club mystery series. So those were like my entry books into mystery as an adult. So I wrote that other book. A year goes by while I'm writing this other book, and I'm sitting in my office at the library I was working at the time. I was the head of tech services, which is hilarious because the head of tech services is in charge of cataloging and all the techie aspects of the library. And it's usually really quiet, and it's usually people that are drawn to it are, very, I would say, task driven. Get this many books out, that kind of thing. And I never fit the profile of being a technical services librarian, but I was a technical services librarian the majority of my career, just by happenstance of opportunities that came up. So, because I tend to be loud and I like to talk, and I just don't fit the profile. But that doesn't mean I wasn't good at it. I just didn't fit the profile. So I was sitting in my technical services office, and I received an email from a woman that had started working at Gale Cengage at the 5-star line. And she said she found my book on her computer from her predecessor and she wanted to buy it. So all I can really say is that was a miracle. Like, I mean, there's really no, obviously I submitted the book originally, but to have a whole year go by, have someone quit their job and hire someone else, and just like all the stars aligning, it was a miracle. That's how I sold my first book. So lo and behold, Made of Murder comes out. I sold the book in 2008. So this is another thing to keep in mind for people going in traditional publishing. It didn't come out until 2 years later. The reason for that being is it had to fit into the production schedule, and I had nothing. Like, I had no website. Like, I had a personal Facebook that I hardly used. I wasn't on social media. I didn't tweet. I still don't really like to tweet. Although I do enjoy Facebook. I'm not a tweeter. And so there was like a lot of groundwork that had to be laid, and of course the editing process for me to be launched as an author. So we did all those things. 2 years goes by, the book comes out, and lo and behold, it does better than anyone expected. Now, I credit that a lot to libraries. The book was about a librarian. It was written by a librarian. Gale Cengage is primarily published for the library market, so it came out hardcover, and libraries, they bought it all over the place, and I'm so grateful that my colleagues across the world showed up and bought that book. Um, so it actually went in its first year into 3 printings, which is like hard to imagine um, as a young author that, I just wanted my book on the shelf at the library. Like that was the ultimate goal. So I continued uh writing, and I was starting to write the sequel because they bought the sequel, which was great news. And uh, when the I would call it the award season for mysteries came around, I was at home and I got on my cell phone a call that said it was from Washington, D.C. And it was from Malice Domestic, which is a mystery convention, telling me that I had finaled for the best first novel for the Agatha Award. You could have knocked me over like with a feather. Like I was shocked because I came out of literally nowhere. Um, and no one knew me. It was strictly um libraries buying the book and like people talking about the book that I was able to get get the notice to final for this award. So I didn't win, but it was an incredible experience. And then I mentioned that I wrote a children's book. Many years later, that children's mystery was sold as a series, and each book was nominated for an Agatha Award. And then the last book actually won. So I did end up winning the Agatha Award in 2015 for Best Children's Mystery. So that was an incredible experience. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that. But I want to get to, how did I end up writing Amish fiction? And as I told you, my first professional job was a librarian in Amish country. So I got a position as a technical services librarian at a small college library in Knox County. And of course, Knox County does not have the same size of Amish populations as Holmes County or even Wayne County has, but it's significant. So the little town I lived in, my apartment was across the street from a Walmart that had just opened. Like when I moved there, I think it was 2004 that I moved there. And when I moved there, like that was the buzz in this small town, like that they had a Walmart. Now, since I've left, the town has grown crazy. They have all kinds of things. Like an ice cream shop and all kinds of crazy stuff that they didn't have when I was there. But it was very common to be shopping in Walmart and be shopping alongside Amish, like many of you in Holmes County do. And there was hitching posts all over town so that the Amish could, park their buggies. There were, Amish selling baskets on corners, different places, fruit stands, all that kind of stuff that I think if you grew up in Ohio, you just kind of take for granted. Even though I grew up outside of Akron, like I still see Amish, I would say at least once a month if they're not like doing construction on a home or, you're just on the highway and you're driving by like a van that's, transporting Amish workers somewhere, something like that. So it wasn't something that I thought much of. And it was definitely not something that I'm like, oh, I'm going to write about the Amish someday. It wasn't that calculated by any means. So what happened is I finaled for the Agatha Award. And with that Agatha finaling and the success of Maid of Murder, I got a new literary agent who has been my literary agent ever since. So for 10 years. And she's incredible. And she is pretty much responsible for every book to come after. So as of last month, my 38th novel came out. So she's sold a lot of books for me, and I love her, and I'm so grateful. And she's also an amazing person. So when I first met with her, we had a conversation that I wanted to elevate my career. I wanted to move from a small press and I wanted to write for a big press. And she was very open to that. And she asked me to pitch her a bunch of ideas. And I did. And I thought they were terrific. I pitched like a magical cookie store because I was always going to write amateur sleuth cozy. So usually with the amateur sleuth cozy, you have what you call a hook. So like for my one series, I have an Amish candy shop. So that's the hook of the series. So I pitched a magic cookie shop, a food truck, a seashell shop. Like I had a lot of great ideas and she did not like any of them. Now I will say that I think every one of those ideas have been published by another author since then, but that's neither here nor there. So we were kind of coming at the end of our meeting. It was a face-to-face meeting, which is pretty rare in this industry. And I just kind of did a Hail Mary. I was like, well, when I was younger, I was a librarian in Amish country. And like, this was 2011. So it's really at the height of the craze for Amish fiction, which I think now we can all agree is a bona fide genre and it's not going anywhere. Amish, plain fiction, Mennonite, whatever it may be is sticking around. Is very popular. It does very well. So at this time, it was really the cusp, the height of it. And her eyes got all big. So my agent is also the agent for Shelley Shepherd Gray, who's like a huge New York Times bestselling Amish fiction writer in romance. So she was like, write about that, I can sell it. And she's like, I want you to write a sweet romance, Amish romance. And I was like, can I kill them? Which is a terrible thing to ask, but that's like an actual like word for word question that I asked her, because I was a mystery author and that's what I've always wanted to be. Like there was no like, oh, I'm going to write maybe Western, or, oh, I'm going to write maybe like, this is my lane. And in my lane, there is a murder and a murder investigation, and the bad guy is brought to justice. So I told her, and as soon as I said the words, I wanted to pull them out of the air and shove them back in my mouth, because I was concerned because I did know Amish and I knew a lot of people that were former Amish, that I would be, by writing about it, misrepresenting a whole community of people like that. That's a great fear, I think, as an author. Like I'm writing about a culture that's not my culture. How do I serve it justice and show both the good and the bad and be honest? So I was nervous about it, but I was like, okay. So I was visiting her. So on the way home on the airplane, I wrote 3 chapters of what eventually became the novel A Plain Death. And she sold that novel I think this was like March, and by May she had already sold it. Like I told you, this was like the height of Amish fiction. So what also was happening at the same time is Penguin Random House. Actually, it was just Penguin then. This was before the great merger. So Penguin was putting feelers out with literary agents, and they were looking for something very specific. So they saw that Amish romance has done so well, so they were going to move into Amish mystery as well. But they were very specific because they wanted to find established mystery writer who lived in Ohio and knew Amish people. And my agent got that email, memo, whatever it was, that the communication came across her desk, and told them about me. So she had already sold A Plain Death in that series, and Penguin was very excited because they wanted Amish mysteries, but they wanted them to be, even though they're cozies and a lot of silly stuff happens in cozies that probably doesn't have real life, they wanted as much as possible, the description of the Amish culture to be honest. So they wanted someone that knew Amish to tell the story. So I was really, like, you look left, you look right, look up and down. I was the only one in Ohio that had been published and established in mystery that knew Amish people. Like, I was it. So Penguin, at the same time I sold A Plain Death, bought what eventually became a 5-book series, the Amish Quilt Shop Mysteries. And because I had another series coming out the same time under my name, Amanda Flower, which is my real name, they asked me to write this series under a pen name, which I wrote it under the name Isabella Allen. And that series, and my agent, she's so savvy, so she got into my contract that I could tell people Isabella Allen is Amanda Flower, which was great because those books did very well. So the first one hit the USA Today bestsellers list. And it really led to every opportunity that I've had since. So it's really been a bunch of winding roads and circumstances that have led me here. So in addition to writing Amish fiction, I was able to sell to Penguin a cozy magical mystery series. So I also write paranormal cozies. The Magical Bookshop, The Magic Garden are my 2 magical series. And then I write the Amish mysteries. But there's never going to be any magic in my Amish books and no Amish in my magic books. So they're very separate, but I'm definitely on the 2 ends. And the reason that I've had those opportunities to write different things is because of the success of the Amish stories. And I'm so grateful for that. Probably, I think this was 2014, to tell you how I'm writing what I'm writing today, which is the Amish Candy Shop. I have, as Jim said, my newest one came out, I think, April 27th, and it's called Lemon Drop Dead. So all the Candy Shop books have these very punny candy related titles. The first one's called Assaulted Caramel. And then there's Marshmallow Malice and Lethal Licorice and all these really fun titles. So how I started writing this series, I had finished the Isabella Allen books. I didn't want to write under a pen name anymore. So I wanted to kind of keep everything into under Amanda Flower, just because just managing 2 social media personas, 2 websites, all that kind of stuff, it became a lot. So we stopped writing the Quilt Shop, and I also stopped writing the Appleseed Creek, which A Plain Death was under. So I was writing some other things. I was writing the magical books. I wrote a series about a museum, none of which was Amish. So I thought I was like over my Amish period, as I like to call it. But my agent had another idea. So I had a big heart-to-heart with her, and I said, I've written at this point 10 Amish novels. I just want to write something different. I don't want to write about Amish anymore. I think I'm done. Let's do something different. Let's go to a different community and have murder and mayhem. And she was like, yes, 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 that's fine. Um, and lo and behold, I can remember very clearly, December 2014, it was the day after Christmas, and I was taking down my Christmas tree. And I I took down my Christmas tree, and I get this call from my literary agent, and she said, "Hey, I have some really interesting news. A movie producer was in Barnes and Noble, and he found your Isabella Allen books, and he wants to make it into a movie and sell it to Hallmark." And of course, I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is every author's, like, beyond what any of us even kind of imagine." Like, I never was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have a movie someday." Like, I just wanted my book on the library shelf. Like, this has been the goal, is book on the library shelf. Um, so she said, I don't, the quilt shop books, I don't want to sell to him for the movie, because there was some legality with Penguin of how that contract was written, and to be honest, we wouldn't have gotten as much money um as we would have had it been written under my real name from the movie. So she said, "So I told him you were writing an Amish candy shop mystery series, and he wants that. So I need 50 pages of an Amish candy shop mystery in 48 hours." Was I writing an Amish candy shop mystery? Absolutely not. Had I even thought about it? No. Um, and I certainly balked a little bit when she first said that, but she said, "Hallmark, this is an opportunity that we can't pass by." So I ended up writing the first book, the pitch, the first 3 chapters of the first book in the series, and that was called A Salted Caramel. The movie producer agreed to sell it, and while he was out selling it, she used that to go to New York and sell the book rights for the story to Kensington. Now you're saying to yourself, "I have not seen on Hallmark an Amish candy shop mystery," and you're right. So what happened was, it got all the way up to the final decisions in Hallmark, and they ultimately decided not to make it into a movie. But silver lining out of it, I have gotten this really um amazing mystery series that I probably would not have written otherwise if I hadn't gone on this weird Hollywood trip. So even part of that, during the selling of the movie, or trying to sell the movie, I went out to, I think it was 2016, I went out to LA and met the movie producer and all that kind of stuff. So it was really, as an author, even though it didn't sell, it was a really interesting experience. So this series, the Amish Candy Shop, is this is the sixth book, but there's also 3 novellas, so it's 9 books long, and there'll be 2 more. So the next book will come out next year, and it's called Peanut Butter Panic. And there's also a spin-off mystery series from it. And the first one is called Marriage. I'm sorry, not Marriage. Murder Can. Murder, I can't remember the title of the book. Let me check. That's terrible. Matchmaking Can Be Murder, because it's about an Amish matchmaker, and it's a spin-off. It's set in the same town. So it's a town in Holmes County. Kind of, I know that Sugar Creek is not technically in Holmes County, but it's based kind of on Sugar Creek without the big cuckoo clock. There's no cuckoo clock um in my story. But what's fun about it, it talks about places people go in Holmes County: Berlin, Millersburg, Charm, all those places. And I try to stay pretty accurate to the geography. The little town of Harvest in the books is completely fictional, but I kind of tuck it in right next to Berlin. between Sugar Creek and Berlin. So if you know where that is, there's this teeny little town that all these characters live in, but of course it's not real. So as luck would have it, and I'll finish up here because I know we want to have some time for questions, but as luck would have it, my movie went through the circuit of Hallmark and deciding if it was going to be made into a movie, and it ultimately got rejected. But in the meantime, Hallmark decided that they were going to start a publishing branch. So as you know, Hallmark has a lot of movies that they make just for their channels, and they get the content for that mostly from books that other publishers make. So they decided, well, we're going to publish the book first and then make them into movies, and that way we own the whole thing. So that comes around into probably a year after they decide not to make A Salted Caramel into movie. Hallmark came back to my agent and they asked do you think Amanda would want to write a book? So I ended up I'm writing currently a series for Hallmark under Hallmark Publishing. And the first book, Dead End Detective, it's a private investigator mystery, definitely not Amish. It's set in the state of New York, in the Finger Lakes area. And I'm writing that right now. So I'm writing the sequel right now. So will it be made into a movie? I get that question all the time. I don't know. So this book came out in the middle of the pandemic. So that really put a wrench into movie production things. And there's a lot of things in the queue that have already been agreed upon to be made a movie. It does give it a higher likelihood of being made into a movie. So maybe someday you'll see this on the big screen or small screen, the television. If not, you can read the story. So I'm writing the sequel. That's what I was doing right before this program started. And the sequel is called Frozen Detective. So right now, just to give you an idea, I'm writing the Amish Candy Shop Mysteries and the Amish Matchmaker Mysteries, the Private Detective series for Hallmark. I'm also writing a farm mystery that's not Amish, set in Michigan's cherry country, and it's called the Farm to Table Mysteries, and the first book is Farm to Trouble. And I got married last year during the pandemic. No one got sick. And it was a very much smaller wedding than it was going to be. But my husband and I bought a farm. So we have a little farm in Portage County, Ohio, and we're building a house out there. And because I've done so much research and everything, an Amish country is building it from Holmes County. So they're done with their part. Actually, they built it very quickly, but they did roll up and, in a bunch of pickup trucks, and all these young guys got out and they threw our house up really fast, and it's built so strongly and well, and it's amazing. So I'm writing that, and that's kind of based, although it's set in Michigan, on my husband and my farm. And then I'm also writing the Magical Bookshop Mysteries, and the next one of that will come out in January. This was the most recent one, Person Vengeance. So I think that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to share with you. And I just wanted to, if you had any questions or comments, I see there's some discussion going on in the chat over here. Please ask away. It can be about publishing, like if you have specific questions about what you're publishing and that sort of thing, or about me, whatever you want.
Are there any questions out there? Amanda, we spoke a little bit before we were live with this session about your career as a librarian. Would you be able to share a little bit about how that has inspired your work, or what influence that has been on your career?
Absolutely. So being a librarian was like the perfect fit until I got to the point in my writing career that I felt comfortable, you know, letting my retirement go and health insurance and all those good things that you get as a public servant. But it was so helpful for me because for three reasons. The first reason is I knew what was most popular because I was a librarian. So the things that people wanted to read, I was really tuned in to what was going off the shelf, circulation, that sort of thing. So that helped me know that when I got to that point and my agent's telling me you have to write Amish fiction, like I knew it was really popular. And I knew that, especially in Ohio where I lived, it was extremely popular and it probably would do well. The second reason is just having the research skills that you get in library school. And I think even more when you're a librarian, because you have to be in library school, you have so much at your fingertips because I went to Kent and they have every database you can imagine. But when you go to a smaller library, you have to get more creative and you have to know who to call, who to email to help your patron find what they really need for not for their job, for their life, for something that's really important. So that helped me too, because it taught me for my sleuths, like how do you find someone's phone number, or how do you find where someone lives, and all this creepy stuff that my detectives need to know, but as librarians know it too, because we have to help people find phone numbers or help them find an address or something like that. And then the third thing is just the library community is just so supportive. I think especially in Ohio because of just how the state of Ohio structures their libraries. Now it's changed over time, but in general, it's more of a statewide kind of system. So like if you're a librarian in Northeast Ohio, you could feel comfortable reaching out to a librarian in Cincinnati and saying like, hey, I want to do this program, or do you have a contact for this author or something like that. So I just think that when my first book came out, because I was a librarian and it was also about a librarian, how it was embraced by the library community, I'll always be grateful for that. So it was really, to be honest, when I decided I was going to quote retire, I definitely cried a lot. It was a really hard decision, but I couldn't, it was too hard to write as many books as publishers wanted me to write and then work a full-time job. To be honest, I had to make a choice.
Well, we'll get to everyone's questions on the chat box, but I do want to jump to Donald's question because it is tied into what you have been saying, Amanda. What is the most effective way to market to librarians? And I'll tell you, you may know this as a tech services librarian, we get bombarded with emails. And so when an author sends me a postcard about their book, it sticks out. I know there's a cost to that, but it's something that's different because if you're not in a major review source like Publishers Weekly or Library Journal, we're not going to catch it.
Oh yeah.
So just that's from my perspective. Can you share as a librarian and as the author what the best way to market to that huge library community? Because if they know that the author is a librarian, those selectors will buy that book.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did, and you're absolutely right, because I was in technical services and I would get so many emails. And you can tell that they're form emails, like they just switch the name out or they say, "Dear librarian," so the first thing I would say, if you're going to send to a library, find out the name of the person you're addressing it to and send it to a specific person. Don't just send it to the reference box or, the info box or anything like that. Like, try to find who's responsible at that library for programming, or who the director of the library is, depending on the size. Like, Cuyahoga County Library, who's humongous, you don't necessarily want to send it to the executive director, but you might want to send it to the branch manager at a small branch. So you can find that kind of information out usually online. A lot of libraries list staff on websites and their email addresses. But I think you make a really good point, like a bookmark or a postcard, something like that just makes you stand out, is so it really it gets, first of all, people buy books, including librarians, based on covers. So if I get to see the cover on that postcard right away, like, then every time I see it, it's gonna, 3 times you see something and then you want to buy it, kind of thing. So that's very true. What I did when I was trying to get my first book into libraries is I hit the roads. Like, I I had this little folder of all this, like, bookmarks and postcards, and that's kind of like a sheet about the book in little folders, and they all like little orange folders. And I drove physically to libraries and, would walk up to the reference desk and be like, "Hi, I'm a new author. I just," and it was primarily, I didn't go out of the state of Ohio, but I was like, "I'm a librarian in Ohio. I wrote a book here." And I didn't take up a lot of their time, like, because I know they're busy and I know patrons are waiting for information. So I would give them the folder, and then I would hightail it out of there. If they wanted to chat with me and ask questions, I was happy to talk, but I wasn't going to make a nuisance of myself. So that's something else you can do, especially, and you definitely want to tell the library in your town, that you have a book coming out, and then the library specifically if you grew up in a different town. Like, if so, maybe your library now is Dover, but you grew up in, like, Akron or something. Like, let the Akron Summit County Library know, because you're like a native from there. So stuff like that. But I think it makes a big difference to show them your face and show them you're friendly and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much.
You're
Next
welcome.
question from Terry. Where do you do most of your writing? That's a fun one.
Yeah, so I do most of my writing where you see me right here. So I was telling them before, I'm actually on a bed, which is fine. I'm in my office, which is also the guest room in my house. So there's a bed in here, and that's primarily where I write. I I think that stems from sitting at a reference desk for, or at a tech services desk where I was processing materials for 40 hours a week for 15 years, that I don't like to sit at desks anymore. I can't bring myself to do it. So I kind of lounge, but I have a lot of pillows, so I'm very mindful of, like, taking care of my back, because I know it's not really encouraged.
I will point back to the library question. I did just send out a link in the chat box about, there's a map of the state of Ohio with a directory for every public library in the state of Ohio by county. So you can
Yeah.
use that if you're looking for that person to contact directly about selection of books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep that in mind. Okay, next question. How about ideas on getting an agent?
Yeah, so getting an agent is like the next step once you have a manuscript, that you feel is ready for publication. Because, like I said before, there's not very many publishers now that will take material without an agent. So they're kind of the gatekeepers to the traditional publishing world. So pre-pandemic, I would have told you to go to writing conferences and pitch to agents in person. I think you stand out more in that regard because they see your face and they kind of get a vibe of your personality. However, there haven't really been any in-person writing conferences for going on over a year now. So there are a lot of materials at your local library, books on how to write query letters or how to prepare like a proposal. Like if your library doesn't have it, they can get it through Opal. I'm not through Opal, that's the college one, but through their consortium or through interlibrary loan, books that'll help you craft a query email. So when I was starting out, I actually sent physical letters, but now everything's done by email. What I would tell you is you need to research your agents. Not everybody takes everything. So like my agent doesn't do picture books. She has people on her staff who do picture books, but herself, she doesn't do picture books. So on every agency's website, they're going to say the name of the agent and what they represent. And you really need to stick to that. Like if you have a picture book and you send it to the wrong person, it's just, you're wasting your time. And what I did is I had like kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. I was a tech services librarian, so I love a spreadsheet. And I would put on when I would submit to the agent, usually on their website, they say like when you can expect a response. So I would put the date for me to like circle back and check in on them. So just keep a good record, and then don't send 500 queries at the same time. Do them in batches, because you may get rejected from the first 5 that you send to, but they might say, give you some notes. Sometimes they'll do that for free and just say like, I really liked your book, but your character was a little too harsh or something like that, like tone down your character, and then you can resubmit to someone else with those edits. I would say once the world goes back to the way it was before, there are a lot of great writing conferences in the state of Ohio that they probably will return, I assume. And being able to pitch to people in person, I really think makes a huge difference if you can afford it and if you can do it. But luckily, Ohio's a really literary state. Like we have, I mean, honestly, we have the best libraries. And then we also have like a really robust writer community. So you can do a lot here and you don't have to travel to like New York City or anything like that. Oh, I think, oh, sorry.
Solid question, yeah. Do you belong to any literary societies or associations?
I do. So I'm a member of Sisters in Crime, which is a writing organization to help women mystery authors, although men can also join. So sometimes they refer to it as Sisters and Misters in Crime. And we have a chapter in Northeast Ohio. We've been on Zoom, of course, for the last year, but it's a really great organization. And if you have any questions about it and you want to join because you write mystery, I highly recommend you can shoot me an email. My email's on my website, which is just amandaflower.com. But we've done really cool stuff. We've gone to the Cleveland morgue. We got to tour the FBI. I also go to the police museum in Cleveland, a shooting range. So I don't really write really scary stuff where my characters are going to the morgue, but it's still interesting to see that kind of stuff. But there's also a lot of, there's also a children's organization in Northeast Ohio that you can join. And I think right now is a good time to put your toe in because all these people are meeting in Zoom. So you're not, if you're in Dover or in Holmes County, you don't have to travel 2 hours for like an hour meeting. You can just click and you're there. So.
Okay, any other questions for our featured author? Okay. Well, thank you. I wanted to say a few words in closing. We appreciate Amanda and all of her time. We appreciate all the viewers and participants who took that time out of their day to be a part of this event here on this Saturday. I wanted to remind everyone that to go to the Facebook page for the Canal Town Book Fest, where you can learn more about the 60+ authors, get a chance to buy their books, and get in on some good giveaways as well. That giveaways will go until 10 o'clock p.m. tonight, so be sure to check that out. Our next program as part of the Canaltown Book Fest will be at 6 o'clock p.m. on Zoom, and that is the Tornado Alley reception. So celebrating the 7th year of Tornado Alley, this is the literary magazine for the Dover Public Library teen department in partnership with the Dover High School English department. And so we're going to meet the teen artists, the authors, the editors who make the magazine possible every spring. We're going to hear from some of the featured creators, see an art slideshow, and going to see the latest copies of Tornado Alley. Liz Strauss is our teen librarian here, and she does a great job facilitating that whole process, working with teen editors and putting the literary journal together. And so, you know, these young men and women are the next version of you. A lot of the authors on this particular Zoom program. So we encourage you to stick around and maybe share some insight on writing to them and have some interaction with them and supporting our young authors. So that is about it. We are so glad that you were part of our day today. We look forward to your next work. We look forward to, if you are a reader, not a writer, discussing some of your favorite books next time you're in the library. So long, everybody. Keep reading, and we will see you next year. And we'll hopefully be in person in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you so much.